It's just reopening the traffic after it was shut down by pro-Palestinian protesters for hours.
It's a joke! It's a joke! It's become fashion! It's fashion! It's fashion, this bullshit!
So this hashtag's gone wild is about free Palestine. Free Palestine. You all know I hate slogans. I understand that they're necessary for marketing, but I hate that people adopt them to avoid any kind of critical thinking, and they just hide behind these slogans. Check out that video, How to Brainwash People. Now, this video is about branding. The actual situation in Israel and Gaza is so bloody and violent and perverse that people in the West just participate as kind of an entertainment, a form of entertainment. So check out that video on amusing ourselves to death. So suffering has become like a drama, like a TV show. And the people who are passionate about it here don't really have any skin in the game. So yeah, a lot of these people calling for peace or calling for there not to be repercussions, are they saying that the aggrieved party should not respond with force at all? And I don't know if we can defend that position in the real world. And I don't think there's anyone that's able or willing to stop Israel right now. It's just what happened is too bad. And the people are so traumatized. Now, I could go on about this all day. I do on my Patreon podcast, but on this YouTube, I want to do more domestic issues like domestic mind viruses, cults, social movements, cancer thinking. I can only describe it as cancer thinking. And that's what this hashtag is. A lot of these hashtags are cancer thinking. There's something like, regular cells. Cells could be perfectly normal, and then all of a sudden, it grows into a cancer and metastasizes. So I think that's what's happened here as well. It's just built up its own steam. So for some reason, this has become like a left-wing, right-wing thing here, a debate instead of an actual fight for survival, which is what the people over there are going through. And it's gone into this tribalism thing, and tribalism trumps all other values. We see it's coming before women's rights, before gay rights, before freedom of speech. We're seeing a lot of progressive, far left-wing people defend a group that's against all of those things. It's really astounding. And how do they do that? With all these slogans. So free Palestine, from who? What are you talking about? When you say free Palestine, what do you mean? What are the details here? So the free Palestine hashtag has gone everywhere, and it seems to be overpowering. It's just there's so many hits on it. And why? Why is that? Well, there are more Muslims in the world than there are Jews. So the online sphere is very democratic. It's just the amount that they can push out. And there's a lot more Muslims in the world than there are Jews. That's just a numbers game. And everybody has a cell phone. Everybody has a cell phone now. And yes, there are a lot of Jewish people with a lot of power. But the enemies of Israel have a lot of power too. They have a lot of money. Why do they have all this money? Well, because they have a lot of oil. So, I mean, we don't want to have a whole video on that. But yes, Israel has power. Jewish people have power. But their enemies have a whole lot of power too. So don't just assume that they are oppressed. Why do you think the Arab world is so poor? Does that make any sense? Think about it. You know how rich they are? They have a whole entire news network, Al Jazeera. So Al Jazeera is funded by Qatar, and guess where the leaders of Hamas live? That's right. Why do people think that the West is the only place that schemes the media? Do you know how arrogant and racist it is to think that other people aren't also capable of scheming, or that they're not scheming us right now? I'm just going to put all my cards on the table. This has been an issue I've been familiar with for many years. It's not something I learned about on TikTok on October 8th. I used to be firmly pro-Palestine, but look, SodaStream is an Israeli company, and I need my bubble water. I'll be very serious about that. I am not going back to flat. So long as my SodaStream keeps working, I will support Israel. I thought it broke the other day, and I nearly joined a Free Palestine rally. I was like, get this out of here. Turns out I just put the CO2 in wrong. But if it hadn't been that, man, this would be a different video, an entirely different video. It was this close. I'm joking. Of course, I'm kidding. I have a dark sense of humor for you first-time viewers. Nevertheless, Israel is a fairly successful country, and its people have contributed quite a lot to science, medicine, and the world economy. But most importantly, SodaStream. For some reason, Black revolutionary groups have grabbed onto the Free Palestine bandwagon, even though Black Americans have absolutely nothing in common with Palestinians. I went on a rant a few weeks ago about that new Drake song, Rich Baby Daddy, with Drake and Sexy Red. And people got on my case. They said I was a prude, this and that. We got to support Black women. But do you think that Palestine is the Mecca for sexual liberation? Think about it. Do you think they're bending over and letting that coochie breathe in Gaza? See, this is just a goofy alliance. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't hold up to any scrutiny. Pro-Palestine. Pro-Palestine is kind of a part of the Ipsy grab bag of revolutionary causes that have been going around for a long time now. There are all the protests. So there are people that are giving out information on the Palestine-Israel conflict at climate rallies, at Occupy, at BLM. Wherever socialists are gathered, someone is handing out literature on this cause. And not everybody's happy about it.
People in power have not been listening.
I come here for a climate demonstration, not a political view.
Poor guy didn't get the memo. You know, the world is divided into oppressors and oppressed, which is a form of Marxism and, once again, doesn't hold up to scrutiny. So that's why on October 8th, you saw BLM come out in support of Palestine. They did this before Israel ever retaliated. So it's not about the bombing. Don't get it twisted. Keep the timelines in order. So the revolutionary position comes with all kinds of positions and a lot of issues that they all go against the establishment, but they're not necessarily related to each other. The situation is absolutely horrific, and the media war has seemed to have come down to who has killed the most babies. Now, Israel was brutally attacked. Of course they were, and their response has been severe. I personally consider what Israel is doing as a force of nature. Hamas started a brutal war. They humiliated them. They attacked children and women. They raped people, and they broadcast it and they bragged about it. We watched an entire nation commit suicide by cop on our cell phones. Now, you don't blame the cop any more than you blame a tree that falls on your house during a storm. That's what's going to happen. It's cause and effect. It's like a storm. They basically whipped up a storm with Israel. 3,000 Hamas fighters and Gaza civilians did this. It wasn't a few rogue soldiers. They also kidnapped 240 hostages and haven't given updates on their safety. And then the Palestinian people celebrated in the streets, even gloating over the dead bodies of Israelis. Ooh, bad look. Opinion polls show popular support for October 7th among Palestinians. So I fail to understand how the people of Gaza are less accountable for their government than citizens of any other country. Is the argument that only a perfect democracy can wage war, so a monarchy can't wage war? Really? Judging by the throngs of people who are celebrating these dead Israelis on October 7th, plus them affirmatively answering, "I support October 7th," I suspect they largely support October 7th. Don't pretend that the Muslim world should be behind them completely, because that's really insulting to Muslims. This isn't in the modern Islamic religion. These are radical people. Check out that Watiko video on mind viruses. Fundamentalism is a parasite on larger worldviews, just like the Inquisition parasiticized Christianity to do evil. Now, we in the West understand this as how Satan can quote scripture to make people believe they are doing good when they are in fact doing evil. Here's the thing. Anyone defending Hamas, and there are people doing that, they're pitching an idea that to us seems counterintuitive. We've seen with our own eyes the brutality that was inflicted upon the Israelis. So they want to say that the rapes and murders that happened on October 7th, they were justified. They're saying, don't trust your lying eyes. You got to listen to all of this. College campuses are going nuts with these pro-Palestine protesters, and I guess they must just be smarter than everybody else. I guess I am just a simple YouTuber and I don't know the intricacies of this argument. Yeah, this meme comes to mind. Imagine knowing so many big words that you can talk your way out of gang rape. In over 100 episodes of Wording, I have never come across words like that. These people must be brilliant. Sarcasm. So they're attempting to override our justice instincts with these slogans. A counter narrative. They have this counter narrative and they have these images of war. Now, you may have seen this map going around. The pro-Palestinian counter narrative is that Israel was the original aggressor. The map should start with a partition plan in which the British and later the UN decided to divide the remaining land. Israel did not start the 1948 war that preceded this conflict. This is the land that the British had initially. They forbade Jewish settlement on this eastern part that is now Jordan. So the only place the Jews could settle was in Israel. So Jews could only settle here, and in 1948, after Israel's independence, the Arab League, which included the Palestinians, declared war on Israel. Now, Israel won. And then Israel won 2 more wars, about to be 3 more wars. Now, the settlements in the West Bank are a different story, and critics called those a land grab. That is beyond the scope of this video. Maybe land grab. So the history did not start on October 7th, but the history prior to October 7th does not have a good side and a bad side like this is some kind of movie. It has 2 sides, one that is our ally and one that is not our ally. In fact, it's kind of aided by our enemies. So yes, the West can be jerks, but all nations have been jerks, and it doesn't mean that our allies are always wrong. The youth in the West has been brainwashed into thinking that we are especially evil among nations, and that's just not true. Of the mass casualty events since the end of the Second World War, the U.S. is only responsible for a few, and none of those have been against our own people. That is a much better track record than the other major powers. Yes, we are grading on a curve. Oh yeah, we are grading on a curve. Yes, we are. It's just that the West is more self-critical, so our weaknesses come to light. Authoritarian nations have worse human rights records, but the information stays hidden. And so, to some of our youth, Hamas and even Osama bin Laden are preferable to our own heroes because they don't know anything else. Because they didn't study. And yes, there are pro-Hamas protesters. I swear to God, there's pro-Hamas. I'm like, whatever. So there are those. And then there are pro-Palestine protesters, and they will say they're protesting Israeli occupation, and they care about the people of Palestine who are currently being hurt. My thing is, did they care much for the people of Syria or Yemen? No, they did not. Did they care about the massacre in Darfur this past week? No, of course not. Do they care about the carnage that's in the Congo so that we can have iPhones? No, not a lick. They didn't care. So already I'm really confused about why they care about this particular war, Israel-Palestine, but they don't care about any other war that is perhaps more brutal. This particular war is the most justified war I've ever witnessed. This is the Taken of wars. And the movie Taken is so popular as a franchise here that I'm very confused as to why all this is going on. Did people not understand on October 7th that this war has to happen? Did they not understand what war would look like? I think a lot of people really do not know what war looks like. And they're just being shown these images now. War is hell. And war is supposed to be hell, so we don't make a habit out of it. I'm going to look up who said that. It wasn't me. It's not original. But yeah, we shouldn't make a habit out of waging war. But is there something unique about Israel-Palestine? What is unique? And yes, a lot of people don't want to hear it, but there is anti-Semitism at play. What else is special about this conflict above all others? I'm running it through in my mind and failing some sort of nefarious influence of the TikTok algorithm. All that I can come up with is anti-Semitism. Now, I'm not discounting that there could be bad actors affecting the TikTok algorithm because TikTok is run by the Chinese and they are our enemy. It is a fool who lets his enemy educate his children. But here we are. Here we are. But if it is the algorithm and it is not organic, well, then it was still pretty easy to rile up this mob, huh? It was way too easy. Now, people say it's anti-Zionism, but anyone advocating for a two-state solution in Israel is a Zionist. Keyword, Zionism, anti-Zionism. Zionism just means supporting a Jewish state's right to exist. That's all that means. Now, why does a Jewish state need to exist? And that's because every few generations, countries rise up against the Jews and try to attack them. Pogroms happens way too often. It happens way too often in Europe, in Western civilization, and around the world. We saw these protests in Dagestan. And by protests, I mean lynch mob. We saw lynch mobs in Dagestan. Keyword here is protest. You see how they twisted that word? I love how the word protest has morphed. And now any gathering, no matter how hostile, is a protest. Look, I know what a lynch mob looks like. And if you're grown and you can't spot a lynch mob by now, Charles Darwin would like a word with you. Okay? But the media calls it an anti-Israel protest. But that was a lynch mob. This is the kind of weaponization of language that we are seeing in real time. And it's not unique to this situation, but we are seeing it here a lot. Now, I'll be very clear with you. I was not a Zionist until October 8th. That's when I saw how callous people were to the suffering of Israelis. On October 7th, I was watching it all live and I thought, well, Hamas is horrible. But the reaction from people around the world on October 8th made me do a 180 on Zionism. I even called up my friend to concede a debate we had 8 years ago. I actually texted. I didn't actually call. Nobody calls. But I was like, you know what? My bad. So yeah, every so often, people pogrom their local Jewish people. It's horrible. And it makes sense for there to be a place for those Jewish people to go. Maybe it's not going to happen in the United States of America, but in Dagestan and a lot of other places, it does happen. So I see it. I'm not going to pretend I don't see it because that would be a lie. And there have been 3 incidences in Los Angeles since this all started. There was clashes outside of the Museum of Tolerance. There was a pro-Palestinian man who broke into a Jewish house. It was in Studio City. And then there was a Jewish man who was murdered at a protest in Thousand Oaks. So like, why is this over here? It should be over there. Far, far over there. Now, there have been very funny incidences. I will say very funny incidences. There was the Black Hebrew Israelites who got in a fight with the pro-Palestinians because the Palestinians thought that were real Israelites. And the Hebrew Israelites were like, no, we hate the Jews too. Okay, so that was just awkward. And then there was a pro-Palestinian terrorist who drove her car into a Hebrew Israelite building because she was confused and uninformed. Like, these two groups could be hating the Jews together, but they're too confused and uninformed to do it. So it's just hilarious. That's funny, but a lot of this stuff really isn't funny, and it should not be happening here. That should not be happening on American soil. And no, I am not Jewish. People ask me that because they assume I'm a mouth-breathing tribalist like them, and I can't apply logic to situations that don't involve me personally. If you can't do that, where is your critical thinking? It's the point of your brain. A lot of people's brains aren't working. This is what we're finding out now. They can get hijacked by a hashtag, unfortunately. So this religious violence should not be here in the United States. Europe can do whatever it's going to do. They have their own problems, but there's no reason for it to happen in the United States. Both Muslims and Jews are like 1-2% of the population in America. So we should really go back to not caring here. And I say that in the nicest way possible. We should not be caring about these things to the point where a man's getting murdered down the road. We shouldn't care about other people's religions. We should barely care about our own if we've got one. That's the deal in this country. We don't care about other people's religions. Muslim Americans, they're upset with Biden for his support with Israel, which is actually surprising because the United States has always supported Israel. That is part of what both parties do since forever, my entire lifetime. And there is no way that the United States was going to support Israel less after October 7th. If anything, we've doubled down. Now, we talk about this, Israel-Palestine, a lot on my weekly Patreon podcast, so I don't want to rehash it too much here. I'm not going to do a play-by-play of that war. We also talk about how the different news outlets are covering it differently because there's always something for everyone. You know, you can get into your own bubble and just see the news that you want to see. But when you take it as a whole, you also see the propaganda that each demographic is being shown. First, we've all got our own news feed. We've got our own algorithm. We're all in our own unique bubble. And if you want to play the Hamas attacks on October 7th, there's a place for that. That's all they talk about. Now, if you want to ignore what happened on October 7th and just focus on the Israeli response, there's a place for that too. Unfortunately, it's Al Jazeera. And also a lot of people's algorithm is like that too. There's a video here of two girls protesting at a Free Palestine rally, and they don't even know that October 7th happened. So that's how small their bubble is.
When Hamas invaded Israel on the 7th of October, what was your initial reaction to that?
I don't believe they did Hamas?
I think so.
They did. No, they did. No, they definitely did. Then outside of our bubble, you've got the propaganda angle, and propaganda is political marketing. So you don't see an ad for Adidas that trashes Adidas shoes, and you won't see a propaganda machine trashing its chosen position. Not all news is propaganda, by the way, but some of it is. Mainstream media has a tendency to repeat, unfortunately, what the government tells them. So you got to take that with a grain of salt. Not just our government, but also the Palestinian government, the Gaza government. So just repeat word for word what Hamas is telling them. So just take that with a grain of salt. Now, if you want to see real pro-Israel propaganda, check out CBN, Christian Broadcasting Network. They are supporting Israel like God personally asked them to. And to the evangelicals, God did ask them to. So check that out. That is pro-Israel. You want to see pro-Palestine? Al Jazeera all the way. So these girls don't know about October 7th. This other guy doesn't know the river from the river to the sea chant. It's in support of a Palestinian state from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, which means the annihilation of the state of Israel as its own Jewish independent state. But no, it means Free Palestine. Well, what does that mean? What does Free Palestine mean? What are the details to your plan? This is what I want to ask people. Like, just sit down and write it out for me. What are the details to your complex plan here? All right, fine. So here are some tricks to the language that we're seeing in this online discourse. We're seeing a lot of tricky language here, people manipulating words. It's an info war. It's an info war, guys. So genocide. People say, if you question anything, you support genocide. 1, no, I don't. 2, I don't think you know what that word means. Genocide, killing of a people. According to the UN, genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, as such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, that didn't happen, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Now we see here at the last sentence, also from the UN. This means that the target of the destruction must be the group as such, or even part of it, but not its members as individuals. And because Israel is technically targeting Hamas members, they are not targeting the group. So technically, by the definitions of the UN, it doesn't look like genocide. We see the population of Gaza in 2023. It has just been growing over the years. And I know the war has seemed bad, but what we've seen this year is not really going to put a dent into this. Hamas is guilty of wanting to commit genocide, but of being too weak and uneducated to do so. Israel is guilty of an assault, not murder, not the murder of a people. They are assaulting a people. Get it straight. They could commit genocide if they wanted, but they're actually doing a lot to prevent non-military civilian deaths. It might not look like it to you, especially if you're watching certain feeds, but it's war, and war is awful. And Israel is not waging an especially cruel war, all things considered. They give a 4-hour break every day. What kind of war breaks for lunch? This proportional response that's being floated around right now.
What is the virtue of a proportional response?
I'm sorry?
What is the virtue of a proportional response?
All right, so Israel's stated goals for the war are 3. 1, to demilitarize Gaza and destroy Hamas. They got to do that. 2, to de-radicalize Gaza like the U.S. did in Japan. And 3, to rebuild Gaza. Yes, you can de-radicalize a population. We've done it before. It's the only way in the Israelis' minds that they can ensure that October 7th does not happen again. Because Hamas has vowed to repeat October 7th over again. They said it. They said it in their own words. They are going to do this again and again. They're basically giving Israel no choice. They're horrible. They're horrible. When Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, we didn't just go and destroy a Japanese naval base. We defeated Japan and removed their ability to wage war. I agree that an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. But look, Japan took out our eye. We took off Japan's head. So we still have one eye left. So we're still seeing. You see? On the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. But hey, look, now Japan and the United States are very close allies. So there's always hope for a brighter future. Imagine if we'd fought 4 wars with Japan over 80 years. Then nobody would have any eyes. Also, international law, like all law, is what can be enforced. And I know it's rough, but that's what it is. So when people say international law this, international law that, and sometimes they misinterpret it, flat out they misinterpret it. But even so, all law is only what is enforceable. We've just lived in a time of peace. Our whole lives, for the most part, doesn't seem like it, but have been relatively peaceful on the world stage. We don't have a strong international government, nor do we have an unbiased international government. People think like the UN is like our police department or like the United States federal government. It's not. It's not that strong at all. You remember how people used to say that the US shouldn't be the world's police? That's another slogan we hear. We shouldn't be the world's police. Hey, point taken. People are talking about this because it comes at the expense of the United States. But that US-led world order has led to this Pax Americana that we've seen, and we've seen since the end of the Second World War. That's the peace we have seen. There's just nobody else to do it because there hasn't been anyone as powerful and as big as the United States as willing to do it. So either the United States is the world's police or the world has no police. And without police, we kind of descend into the law of the jungle, which we have seen and are seeing. Countries will just go and snatch land now. Like Russia is doing it in Ukraine, just going and snatching land. We might see it in Armenia. We might see it in China with Taiwan. That's the big one. That could really mess us up. Now, ideally, the UN would keep the peace, but they can't really fight a whole war like that, at least not with the major powers. And the way it is set up, the UN can't really stop a fight between powerful members, veto and so forth. I mean, so it's not that. It's not as strong as our local police department is to us. I'm not saying this is good or bad. I'm just saying that this is what it is. It means when someone says that the US is not the world's police, we have to be okay with living in an international order, without any police. Now, America might be better off. I'm going to give it that. America might be way better off, but the rest of the world will suffer. And yes, we will have to see more horrific things through the phone. As bad as things have been, without us keeping the peace, it can get much worse. Now, remember, it's the United States that has aircraft carriers parked in the Mediterranean, keeping this war from expanding, God willing. So you're welcome for a third of my tax dollars, rest of the world. And look, the UN is talking in circles, but it can't force anyone to action. It can't force it. Meanwhile, Hamas is out here saying that the UN is responsible for the safety of Palestinians. I'm not even joking. They're asking in this interview, you've built all of these tunnels. Why didn't you build a single bomb shelter for any of your people? And this representative of Hamas official, says that we built those bomb shelters for us to keep us from getting killed. It's the UN's responsibility to take care of our people. You know, the one thing I hate in leaders is when they betray their own people. You can be as evil can be, but you got to be loyal to your own. And this guy is not. Just trash. Put him in the trash can. I can't believe he's doing this. I'm not really clear on how this would work. I think it's just Hamas trying to avoid their responsibility. And the losing side, Hamas, and the people supporting the losing side are calling for a ceasefire because they are losing. And because these images are really horrific. Bombs kill innocent people. I'm just going to throw it out there. Bombs kill innocent people. And they developed this machete spinner missile that targets individuals without an explosion. And people are mad about it, but it's actually more humane than a bomb. You can't make everybody happy. You really can't. A bomb's too bad? Okay, machete spinner. We don't like machete spinner either. Who came up with machete spinner? Someone who couldn't work on Saturday morning cartoons, so they went to work for defense? I don't know, but I guess it's not a bad idea. But also, who thinks of this? Who's in a room being like, yo, what if, get this right, what if we put all these machetes on this motorized fidget spinner, right? And it just, zoom. People are like, that's a great idea, machete spinner. All right. $10 billion. $10 billion for that project. To summarize, no, this goofiness should not be over here. And no, we don't have anything in common with Hamas. Stop chanting whatever hashtags you see on TikTok. It's just embarrassing. And what Israel is doing is what they feel that they have to do. And even if we could stop them, which I don't know if we can, even if we could stop them, there is not the appetite to do it right now in this country. Okay, so this brings us back to why do sheltered college students in the West who don't have to live with the consequences think that they can tell anyone else how to live? We clearly haven't figured out our own lives, and we are playing this life on easy mode. Why does anyone think that we have anything to add for someone else's battle for survival? Stop trying to impose American ideologies and American systems of thought on other people. It doesn't apply. It doesn't apply. We don't have to be all up in everyone else's business like that. Anyway. Thanks for watching. Subscribe.